like to call F&A committee to order. If city clerk will take note of attendance, we'll proceed on with the agenda. First thing is approval of the agenda as submitted. Are there any changes, revisions, or questions in regards? Any objections to acceptance as presented? All right, we will accept the agenda as submitted and we'll move right into public comments. Anybody wishing to make public comment before the committee is welcome to do so at this time. We will not take online public comment, but it can be submitted via email or to city clerk and we'll get to it. I did not see if we have any hands up on. I don't see any hands. Do want to make note, city staff and council members and mayor are public too. So if you so choose and have an issue, come talk. Don't want to, we sometimes feel nobody we don't know in the audience and so there's no public comment. That's a little unfair. All right, moving on. Let's move on to approval of the minutes dated June 4th, 2024. Are there any clarifications or revisions in regards to the minutes? Any objections to acceptance as presented? Chair has none. All right, we'll take the minutes as presented, accepted. From there, we'll move on to consideration of claims report dated June 24th, 2024. Any questions or clarifications in regards to that material? I wanted to check real quick. And I have received no questions that I can see right now in my inbox in regards to that material. Are we good with accepting of the warrants as presented? All right, with that, we'll take the warrants as presented as accepted and move that forward to council. With that, let's move on to Agenda Bill AB 24075, 2025-2030 non-utility capital improvement plan CIP. We may want to consider a bar stool for the podium, just not only that he's spending a lot of time, but if we have a presenter with a lot of time, they may want to sit instead of just stand there the whole time.
I do hide over at these chairs, unfortunately. I'm afraid I'm still in the Public Works meeting, so let me jump in real fast. That's loading. Good evening, afternoon. You are on mute. Okay, good evening today. I am here to give an update on the changes in the status of the non-utility CIP that has been going through multiple review sessions through F&A, through Public Works, and through Council. At this point, we're several iterations in many ways, it's a refinement of a lot of those goals and efforts. What we have here tonight is the reflection mostly of the impacts from AB 24068 and AB 24069. That would be respectively the 384th Street sidewalk expansion and the Kimball Creek bridges on Meadowbrook Way. Both of those projects went over the budget for the year, and so that caused a lower starting fund balance, specifically in the transportation restricted funds. In order to accommodate that, we had several discussions in those meetings about those agenda bills and worked through some of what the so to speak consequences would be to the non-utility CIP, and this is that. And so I'd like to walk you through the details in step, and just to call out a couple of documents and explain what you have in front of you. You'll have one document here, looks like this, and I would join, but Andy, can you link them to that? So it looks like this. I'm sorry it's so far, but I think you can see no colors on it. It says request and change log for the CIP. And the intent of this document is to allow you to see the changes as we've gone. So it shows the dates of the agenda bills and when they were adopted, and then it shows the consequence. You were muted before, but now you're not muted. Okay. So this document. This document calls out those changes and what essentially I and Jana have done to the CIP so you can track as we move. Just to be very transparent and clear about how things are changing over time. So that will reflect directly onto both the worksheets and into the revenue and expenditures combined sheet. Obviously, we'll get into more detail, and I'd like to do that here in a second, but that is the lay of the land in terms of those documents. Lastly is the following, the worksheets, which, sorry, I'm a bit of a paper digital mess right now, but that is what I'm referring to when I say a worksheet. There's, 22 of those, and they track with the overview slide. So to get into what has changed, I just want to say that the list of the changes can be seen in numbers 5 through 9. And I'll go through them in order and kind of just briefly explain them. So since this was a transportation, both of those projects, both agenda bills were transportation specific overruns. We kept the impact of those overruns to transportation revenues. So we looked at I'll list them real quick, but essentially we looked at the programs that are transportation specific. We looked at Meadowbrook Restoration, the bridge, Meadowbrook Bridge Restoration. We looked at River Trail Boardwalk, and we had to compromise on labor once we had to rebalance all those items. So first and foremost, you will see a reduction in the year 2025, a bit of a dip to account for somewhere in the range of 50-ish% or some. I will get specific percentages and numbers exactly. Right now, I don't have them. Sorry about that, but a dip in the programs just in 25 that will correct for themselves after that to account for these overruns. And then the next one down is the Meadowbrook Bridge Restoration. We discussed this in the Kimball Creek Bridges agenda bills, but what staff has been learning over time looking into this project is that our abutment is very close to a revetment, which is a kind of a bank armoring project that the county is pursuing. The county's project is likely going to time in 27. And so our efforts here are to suggest that we delay this project, both because of the funding lack in the next few years and to better time with that King County project so that we can make sure that our abutments that hold our bridge up are set in place properly to account for that revetment, basically to time them together and try to do as much collaborative work as we can, utilizing their research and their information on the bank stabilization efforts to make as good of a project as possible. We don't see any, the bridge has reduced weight limits and some other things like that. That will still stay. Obviously, without any repair work, we will not be able to lift those. So we'll continue to go down this road and we will continue to have to review our bridge as we go between now and 2027. I saw your hand up. Do you want me to pause and explain anything real fast?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a little bit more information about then, since obviously I was under the impression that we did need to move forward with this in order to prolong the life and the usability of the bridge. Will that delay cause any ramifications there? Will it still?
So,
And then what happens, I guess, if the county ends up delaying their project? Will we need to move in at that point regardless of whether they're moving forward?
yeah, there's a lot going on in that. And to answer, one, I would assume that the county is not likely to delay because their revetment is failing much faster than they want. So they need to get on it pretty quick. And they can't let that revetment fail given their mandates to kind of maintain the ones that they own. We have a lot of facilities that revetment would jeopardize if it goes. And so their timing is, they need to maintain time. But yes, there is some wiggle room there. I'm sure they could have chaos happen to them. In terms of us, my understanding, and Jeff can run up here and correct me if I'm about to jump on something, but my understanding is that we will not have catastrophic or, intense issues with delay to 27. What we will have is continued degradation at a somewhat slow but consistent rate, and it is very dependent on weather, flooding, things of that nature, especially given the revetment's proximity. A bit of this is an unknown variable, but I don't think the bridge is in utter collapse mode in there's more than 10 years is my understanding. But I'll let Jeff refine.
That was good. That's pretty accurate. So bridges are rated on a base, they have a structural deficiency rating, right? So this bridge has been slowly declining towards a structurally deficient condition, but we are not there yet. Just based on our observation of it and discussions with our inspectors from the county, we think we have 10 years before it slides into structurally deficient condition. In which case, we would then at that point need to do something about it because there is a basis then for having to make repairs. We know that we have changing conditions in the interim. So that such that mill site development is coming, which could provide funding. We know that there could be bridge funding opportunities as far as grants, which come down the line. So what we're doing is essentially taking this a little bit of time to look at all of our options. Meanwhile, while the county works on its revetment, which they are scheduled to do in 2026, so in a couple of years, they must not have any negative impact on our bridge. So they have to design that so it doesn't impact our bridge. We have our consultant set up to work with them to be sure that they don't. So hopefully that answers your question.
And that includes the negative impact on our bridge. That includes if they continue to delay on their project or if they start delaying on their project rather. Or is it
Yeah, I
just
don't
with,
know that the delay on their project is actually going to cause us any issues with our abutments
Unless it fails.
necessarily, or with the piers. So what we have is scour happening around the piers. I don't think that's related to the revetment.
Okay.
So the revetment, it's raveling up above at the front edge. So it's starting to flank. So it's going to fall apart eventually if nothing is done with that. Down towards the bridge area, what we are seeing is scour around our own piers and scouring along the toe of that revetment down by the bridge. So that will further destabilize the revetment. So if nothing is done eventually, that could potentially cause a problem, but I can't predict. With rivers, it's very difficult to predict, what a failed revetment is going to have on that pier. I would actually be more worried about our abutments and our approach structure for the bridge if the revetment fails. So, but I don't think it's going to do that quite yet. Then again, changes to river structures are episodic and they can happen very abruptly in the case of a large flood. But, county is working at county speed and we're engaged with our own consultants to monitor it. So I feel fairly comfortable with where we're at on it right now. I've seen much worse.
thank you.
Just to add one thing, when we do move a project over in time, it does get more expensive. So that also is part of it. A consequence of moving a project out is one of those. Okay. Is that, you want me to stick there? Any other questions regarding Meadowbrook Bridge and the consequences to that, or can I move forward or should I move forward?
Go ahead.
Okay. Next on is the River Trail Boardwalk project. It was in the previous iteration, it was slated to start in 29 with a starting fund amount of 971,500 and then 2030 at 1,488,000. And in order to accommodate the CIP, we pushed that project one more year out. So in a sense, 1 year off the tail end of the CIP. And we swapped the starting year for the second year. So as to take advantage of kind of some timing and where the cash flows were ending up for the CIP, it would allow us to kind of get a better of a jump start. Again, this is the very end of the CIP. So in 29 to 30 is a lot of time between here and there to try to identify how the scope could change and how our goals as a city change and how council chooses to act. So it's very, it's starting to get into the distance for us. And we're just trying to make sure that our programs and our projects and stuff like that are very clearly funded and we're not, facing some sort of debt, but the exact numbers we're getting a little, kind of in the weeds in terms of how much it's going to cost exactly. And it's especially going to get worse after and beyond the 6-year CIP. But we'll continue to refine that. In 2 years, we have the next update of the non-utility CIP and we'll refine it then as well. So that's that consequence. And then the last one, and this is a bit of an unraveling. So part of the reason why you received an email from me and a printed copy of that email material is because there was an error in how the labor costs were allocated across all of the projects. As you could probably deduce, if we change some of these projects, then the amount of labor that we're going to be associated with them changes as well. So I like to call it a bit of a Rube Goldberg machine. You move some things around and then all the other things start moving around as well. Labor is just like that. So as we shrunk some of the programs, as we moved Meadowbrook Bridge, as we moved the boardwalk out, it changed how the labor got associated across the board. I made the labor realignment happen, but I did not account for some labor policies that were made regarding the community center and how its labor is deduced. And so that error was remedied and recalculated. And what you have in front of you is that correction. So my apologies for that. Yes, simply put, my apologies. And the last one is a railroad crossing improvement. This was an adopted 2023-28, so adopted in this current CIP through a recent budget amendment, and it was missed, and it should have been included in here right from the get-go, but it was missed because it was part of a mid-year amendment that didn't make its way on to the start of the review. One of the nice parts about that is it did not cause craziness in terms of our financial forecasting for revenues or for our expenditures because the project is overwhelmingly funded with grants. So we were able to kind of balance it out. The big difference is that labor went into that project in that year, and that does do a little bit of redistributing as well. Divides the labor costs a little bit more. So yeah, that is the breakdown of both this change request, the most recent changes, and a note about CIP. Is there any questions?
Go ahead.
Not on those,
Okay.
but
Well, that's something else.
gee, I wonder if there's anything else on here that's really important here. Okay, on the community center expansion, when I looked back at it the last time that I saw it, I thought that the big number at the bottom was somewhere around 29 point something million.
Yep.
And now it's down to 28.9. Can you just go over again why that one specifically went down?
That was that policy that I had mistakenly did not include. So the labor got divided
That's the labor.
incorrectly. Yep. So
Okay.
when you got the agenda packet, it had the number that said 29, and I can't remember the exact. That was the incorrect number. I miscalculated the labor and the way I balanced it. I corrected it in the printed copy. This should be very representative of what you saw before. So before this most recent packet, more reflective of the one you would have heard at the most recent council meeting. In fact, it's literally the same number.
Any additional questions? I already had to go out of. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that one, let's move on to Agenda Bill 24079, authorization of fire department vehicle purchase. Who's gonna speak to this one?
Well, I can introduce it.
Okay,
So initially this was brought on because the fire department's SUV was totaled by the insurance company because it was involved in a non-injury collision. And so we needed to replace that vehicle. And so then there was some conversation with fleet and fire about what the needs are of the department. WCIA will do total replacement, so it's cost of the truck. They did authorize, instead of like for like, they authorized us to get a truck versus the SUV. And so then they wanted the base price for the new truck and then the upfitting charges extra. And so the total cost is anticipated to be 81,000, and WCIA said that's in line with what they expect to reimburse. So we're just bringing it to council because it exceeds the 50,000 purchasing authority.
That's why all right. But for the most part, this is, insurance is paying for this vehicle.
That's what we've been able to figure out with Dina's work with the WCIA is that they're gonna consider it a light vehicle and cover most of it.
If
Or
not, all
yeah,
of it.
all of it. She's the, she's the one with the conversations with the insurance company.
Okay, any questions?
No, we talked about it in public safety as well.
All right. Good to go.
All right, thank you.
We'll take it on the council. Any opinions on consent or non-consent?
That's a consent.
I'm fine with
I think
that.
it's a consent. Okay. No argument for me. Let's move on to the next one. All right, flipping back and forth. Authorization of continued legal services, K&L Gates.
So administration is asking for approval to extend, well, we've exceeded the $50,000 spending threshold on that, so we need council approval to continue legal services with K&L Gates, and they've been assisting us with fee-for-service agreements and other legal matters. And the mayor can chime in with if you need more details.
Do you need more details? So this is fee for service for fire, for police, for the working with the Snoqualmie tribe. As well as additional research.
When we thought it was gonna be 50,000, but it's actually gonna be 130,000?
Or more. We have no idea how much this is gonna, how long this will take. So. With the additional 80,000, it could be up to 160,000 or more.
Okay, and this gets us to. Okay, I don't want to get into too much detail open. I have to think whether this is worth an executive session for a discussion of prior to taking action or not.
I think we will have one anyway
Okay,
on Monday night, but. I think we're hoping for a good outcome using them versus. No one. And this is their expertise.
please, what happens if we don't? And I want to know the answer to that outside of an executive session. So,
That's fair.
we may want to juggle executive session, but okay, let's move that forward, non-consent at this stage. And have discussion at council.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
We want to then have, or suggest having executive session kind of in the middle of the council meeting, essentially before we do these.
Yeah, when we get to the agenda, council agenda, we'll juggle things.
Perfect.
All right, let's move to agenda item number 6. I don't know why I take my glasses off. I need to just live with the fact. Well, I had hyperlinks to it, not quite the right spot. All right, agenda bill 2480, amendment number 2, the agreement for legal services with Ogden Murphy Wallace PLLC. Who wants to talk this one?
I can talk to this one as well. So we, Ogden Murphy's been working on the CA carry appeal. And so we had an agreement with them originally, and then we needed an amendment. So last October, we came back and asked council for an amendment, increasing the amount by 25,000, bringing it to a not to exceed 75,000, so that they could get through the appeal process. We did win the appeal. And now CA Carey has filed a petition for review with the Washington Supreme Court. So now we are going to incur additional attorney's fees. And so we're asking you to sign amendment number 2, extending it. And we hope that this extension will cover the whole thing. Of course, we won't know for sure, but so we are waiting on the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court to decide whether to accept that review. So we're sort of at the mercy.
Any questions or concerns?
And chat in executive session.
Same.
Chat in executive session, grumbling about the vendor who just keeps on giving.
And I will say that interim city attorney David Linehan does have additional information about this and can speak to it in an executive session.
Great. All right, let's move that one on to council non-consent, and we need to talk about where the executive session gets put in the agenda. With that, discussion ERP project status update. I assume that's why you started making movement.
So no presentation tonight. Hopefully this can be relatively quick. Next week, we have a pretty extensive session with our on-site implementation consultant that's going to be working with our human capital management team to really do a parallel processing event, which is really, I think, the first one that we've had overall. We should probably have a pizza party next week for that for the most part. But the goal is to really kind of run payroll through the Tyler system, see exactly what kind of numbers it produces. And then after that, kind of check that against Springbrook as well as kind of other data as well to make sure that we're very firm in terms of what we're producing. In addition to that, they're going to be verifying employee pay and deduction benefit data, making sure that it's calculated correctly. And then eventually they're going to be sending a bank to the file for testing direct deposit as a part of that. So there's a whole effort behind a lot of that that's going on next week. That's pretty much the entire week for Jana, as well as the payroll implementation team. In addition to that, at the end of July, they're going to have another parallel processing event as well. So they're going to take this information they gather from this experience overall, work on making those corrections from what they see, and then rerun that kind of parallel processing at the end of July, see where we're at that stage, and ideally make progress towards ultimately the goal, which is really going live with payroll January 1 of 2025. This Thursday, we're going to have a half-day session with an implementation consultant regarding budget. We need to really kind of develop our skills internally in terms of power users and how to operate the budget module within Tyler so that we can integrate our directors and division managers as well into that process. We're hoping to actually run budget out of the Tyler system this year. Previously, we've been doing a lot of spreadsheet work in order to develop the budget overall. And so this will be the first time that we've integrated a software system as a part of the budget process moving forward. So we're looking forward to that. And then the other kind of phase that's really going on right now is the enterprise asset management phase. At this stage, they've been working on their assets types, making sure that those assets they've got correct spellings for those assets, as well as making sure that it matches the correct asset types to the correct assets. They've been developing those activity codes. They're going to be adding the finalized activity codes to production. So they've been working on moving a lot of that into the proper environment when it comes to that. In addition, Brendan and his team has been working really hard on the GIS configuration as well, making sure that they're cleaning up those GIS assets. And then we've been as well financially involved in the conversation too, because we've got to set up the accounting methods for each of those potential activity codes and work orders that could come through as well, and how they interact with the general ledger kind of moving forward too. So it's a full integration kind of effort between a lot of these different phases that we're moving on right now. And that's kind of where we stand at this stage. So I know we had a session last week with our payroll implementation consultant. Next week is going to be heavily involved in that, which is going to take a lot of their time away from us for other things. But I think we're making good progress in getting this forward. So that's it.
Thank you.
Nice job. To all of finance. And Parks and Public Works.
All right, and the rest of the items, I believe, are upcoming future items. For discussion with that, we'll move on to review of draft council agenda. The intent is to have a roundtable at 6 p.m. Roundtable at 6 p.m. The roundtable discussion being around affordable housing, RFP, RFQ discussion. Anticipated for a full hour. Okay.
Up to 50 minutes, yes.
All right, I will move to regular council at 7 p.m. Agenda approved, public hearings, appointments. We'll have ceremonial, wait a minute. You gave me a change. All right, so far we're still tracking. We'll approve the agenda as well, public hearings if you have any. We'll have oath of office, badge pinning, deputy chief. And then we'll have public hearings on the transportation improvement program. And a presentation introduction of utility rate schedule.
We move that down to Parks and Public Works Committee.
Okay. Okay, so at this stage, I'm gonna run off the paper. Okay, proclamation, so no presentation, no proclamation at this stage. Public comments per outlined, and on the consent agenda, we will have the city council meeting minutes and the approval of the claims report. We did have one item out of Parks and Public Works that went to, I thought,
I don't think anything.
King Street's gonna be a pop-up discussion, but I thought there was another item that we said ought to just. Nope, I'm not seeing it now. All right, we'll proceed on.
But number 15, the fire department vehicle. We're gonna move up to consent.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. Let's move that one up under consent agenda. Okay, and then we'll move into committee reports. Information, fire first quarter accreditation report for his public safety. And community center, community development committee at this stage has no reports. Parks and Public Works has non-utilities capital improvement plan, water reclamation facility 3 improvements. Change order number 1, 6-year transportation improvement program for a period. Yada, yada, presentation, introduction to utility rates. Will we get a copy of that prior to council? Okay, if you could, please. And then a discussion of Puget Sound Energy EVQ curbside charging. And if we can insert a discussion item there, I'll take privilege at this stage of King Street seasonal closure.
Yep.
Oh, save Kat the difficulty of remembering from 1 week to the next. All right, and then we'll move to F&A, authorization, continue legal service, K&L Gates. We just discussed amendment number 2, agreement legal service for Ogden Murphy Wallace, just discussed. Number 15, fire truck, we will move on to consent. But let's back up at that stage. Can we move the executive session to occur before F&A? In the past, it was the tool won't do that. We just want to make sure that I don't have that anymore.
Valid.
It's like, yeah, the tool can't do that.
But do we want to do mayor, the report, mayors and liaison reports before executive session? Or do you want to do executive session and then come back and also then do reports?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna get kind of late. I'm not sure we're gonna do reports one way or the other.
For purposes of the agenda, we can.
No, if I have to sacrifice something at the end of the agenda, I'm sorry, I'd rather have it, sorry, Mayor. Have it the liaison reports get sacrificed versus the business of the
Okay.
running the city.
So you want
So-
executive session,
Before F and A,
then F and A,
then F and A. And then committee of the whole, mayor's report. Are there any executive sessions not concerning the agenda bills we have here?
Well, one ties to it, so
Okay, well, I,
I wonder if, yeah. I mean, do you want to maybe read them in, the agenda bills in? The motion? Both of them and then go to executive session or?
just for awareness, okay, we can read them in. How do I do that? Cause then I have a dinosaur in the field that I'm just
Two of
gonna
them.
leave on the field.
Yeah.
I think we just make a statement that we're gonna go in to executive session regarding these agenda bills, then we after executive session, officially read them in motion.
Okay. Sounds good.
Quick question.
Well, okay, one thing first though. Nope, never mind, put myself out of it. Go ahead.
The other executive session says, collective bargaining, proceedings. Is that still intended to be an executive session? Okay,
Not that I know of.
oh, so it might not be.
Right. But we'll keep it on there just in case something good happens between now and then.
Okay, well then
Are we
I
good?
won't
Can
worry
we-
about it then.
Go back and do that
Can
later.
we split that one though and leave the collective bargaining at the end?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That we won't have to wait so long to get back to the.
That was kind of what I
agenda.
was getting at.
Yeah. No, good catch. All right. All right, and with that, then we'll get into reports and then the executive session and adjournment. Are we good with all those revisions? You got them all?
Yes. Yes.
Cause I won't remember. Oh.
I'll do my best.
I know me. All right, any other items for discussion before committee? If not, unless there are objections, we're adjourned.